Hi, my name's John. Welcome to the Eco Park, operated by Eco Sustainable Solutions. We're really sorry that you're unable to join us. So we're ready and willing, but unfortunately unable to welcome you to visit the site to find out more about the proposals. So what we've decided to do instead is make a video of what you would have seen if you'd come to the site and talk to us. And hopefully what this will do as well is give you a summary of what's proposed and what we do, but also enable you to ask the right questions so that you can find out the information that you need. It's actually the 25th anniversary of the company this year. There's quite a lot happened over the last 25 years. The timeline here shows you some of those milestones over the last 25 years, including contract awards which have been won by Eco, including actually recently, it's not on the timeline, but they just recently re-won the tender from BCP Council to manage all of your food and garden waste and street sweepings as well, things like that. So that's the sort of material that comes here, the things that you put in your organic collection bins. So the majority of what happens here is recycling, and so we're going to talk through some of the detail of that in a minute. But really a huge amount of composting is really what we're probably most known for, and creating products from that compost, from that green garden waste and food waste that you provide. And I think it's fair to say that Eco over the last 25 years has really set the standard, if you like, for the way in which green garden waste and compost operations should be run, and the product standards as well, the materials that are generated from those waste products that you put in your bins. Obviously, what we're also sort of conscious of, I suppose, as well, is the next 25-30 years and aiming for this net zero carbon objective as the country by 2050. So it's really, I suppose, a mix of the waste challenge and the climate challenge, the climate emergency, where we see ourselves sort of fitting in. That's our role, really. So we're going to go on and we're going to talk through some of the boards, information boards that you would have seen if you'd visited us over the coming days. But this shows you what happens on the site at the moment. So we've got several different streams of material come in. Soil's just behind us, which is probably the noise you can hear actually, and that is graded, and some of the green garden waste compost is added into the soil to make these super soils and enriched and premium growing medium soils. The compost material, we have mulches and composts. Some of the oversize of the compost that can't be, the woody material can't be composted, goes into the CHP plant, combined heat and power. So again, you might not know that we have one of those, but that actually powers the site. We have wood waste. Some of it's dried using the heat from the CHP plants, and then that goes off as a biofuel. And we have food waste. The food waste comes in and goes to our AD facility near Dorchester at the moment, but we'll come back to that in a second. And then last but not least, we've got the street sweepings, which are washed and graded. So almost everything that comes in, just a tiny percentage of this material, the street sweepings, almost everything is put back to good use, whether that's as materials or as energy, electricity and heat. I've mentioned a couple of these points, but our millionth tonne of compost this year, which we're really proud of. It's a lot of material. We're carbon positive as a site, so we generate our own energy from renewable materials. Also this year we have so far prevented 1.5 million tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions by diverting material from landfills. So I think that's a really important point, and it's part of the I suppose the two roles that we play. One is around the waste challenge, and the other is around the climate change challenge, the climate emergency, if you like. So those are the two aspects of what we're involved with and where we're going in terms of development. So cutting to the chase, really, we're proposing to build an energy recovery facility that will recover energy from residual leftover rubbish, so things that really genuinely can't be recycled. So that's not something we do at the moment. We generate energy on site, as I've mentioned, but we don't treat residual waste at the moment. We don't manage or handle that material. So this is a really important additional development for the site. We're also going to be recycling more on the site, both more food waste, more garden waste, and also more of the recyclable materials that perhaps were missed. So how the ERF will work, the material will come in and be delivered inside a building, so that will manage any odour. So all the odour from that waste that you throw away will be contained in the building, and the air will be drawn through the building and dealt with through the energy recovery facility process. We'll separate out any recyclables that we can, and then the rest of the material, which is really rich in energy, it's full of energy, will be generating electricity or heat. So around about 3.4 megawatts of electricity, and that could either go through a private wire to local buildings, and we're talking to building operators and landowners, or it could go to the new houses that are proposed to be built at Parley Cross, and 11.5 megawatts thermal of heat. So we're really keen for that heat to be used as well, talking to local building operators and landowners. So there's a real opportunity to use that energy in the local area. So we'll come on to a bit more of what it will look like, but it's really a sort of an agricultural building. It's a big shed really, obviously with a chimney stack on the ends. What's important is to mention at this point, we already have permission on this site for a biofuel facility. So that would take organic materials and turn them, that can't be composted or otherwise used, and turn them into energy, electricity and heat. That's about 30,000 tonnes, that existing permission. So what we're proposing to do is basically double the capacity up to 60,000 tonnes, change the fuel from biofuel to residual waste, leftover rubbish, and massively increase the amount of energy that's recovered as a result, but actually in a smaller building, a lower building, sorry. So the building height that we're talking about here is 16 metres versus just under 18 metres for the existing permission that we have for the biofuel facility that we haven't built yet, and we're not planning to build, we're planning to do this instead. We also have permission for an anaerobic digestion plant, AED, so that's similar to the one we operate already near Dorchester, and that would take your food waste and turn that into fertiliser and gas, which can be used, it's a renewable gas, which can then either be used in the gas grid, or it can be used as a fuel or to drive a turbine to create more electricity. So there's lots of different things you can do with that gas. It's very similar actually to the gas that's generated in a landfill site, but the difference is that it's contained and you can use it again, use it properly. So, so that's what's proposed on site. Now, you might be thinking these are all big numbers. We process 250,000 tonnes of material. We're talking about an additional 60,000 tonne ERF plant, but actually it's the tip of the iceberg, because across the Dorset, Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area, they they're responsible for 1.6 million tonnes of waste in total, and about half of that is from households and businesses. So 800,000 tonnes a year is from households and businesses. There's a plan to manage that waste. A lot of that material is exported at the moment from the county, from BCP and Dorset. About 320,000 tonnes is exported, leaves the area, and it travels a lot further than it necessarily would need to. Again, of that, all of that waste, 72,000 tonnes goes to landfill. So what we're really trying to do here is reduce the amount of rubbish that ends up in a landfill. And that's really what this ERF, Energy Recovery Facility, and the additional recycling we're proposing to do is all about. One of the questions I'm sure you're going to want to ask and find out more about is in terms of emissions. So what comes out of the chimney, and this chart here is probably the best way of explaining what happens. So this graph shows up to 100% is the emission limit value. So it's the maximum amount that you would be allowed to emit from an energy recovery facility plant. So this is the limit that's set to protect human health and the environment. So as you can see, typically for a plant like the one we're proposing, in terms of the different pollutants, you've got them listed here. The biggest one in terms of the the level that's emitted is oxides of nitrogen, but typically you can see almost all, if not all the other parameters are below 50%, and some are well below 50% of that limit that's set to protect human health and the environment. Smell and odour is another point that people rightly would be concerned about. As I mentioned earlier, the waste, residual waste would be tipped inside a building, and the building is under a negative pressure. And what that means is the air is drawn into the building and through the combustion process. So that deals with any odour that might be in the waste that you've put in your bin at work or at home or at school that's come to us for us to process. So there really shouldn't be any smell from the residual waste. So that's quite an important point. Another couple of important points, so wildlife and habitats. We are amongst the natural environment here. With our background in soils and in compost and in organic materials, it's really, really important to us, a really important aspect of what we do and what we stand for. Improving soils, improving the natural environment, giving them more capacity, whether that's for carbon storage or for growth or soil health, really, really fundamental to us. So we've spent a lot of time investing in near site, on site and off site improvements to biodiversity and to habitats. So there's a lot of information available on our website and on our social channels about that. It's a fundamental part of what we do. We've even got ducks made their home on the water lagoons that we have on site here, which is really lovely actually, and something you can see on a visit if you come out to see us. And I think one other thing to mention as well, sorry, a little bit of noise in the background there, but one of the things to mention here is about the opportunities as well. So I've mentioned heat and electricity, which are really important, but also in terms of education, employment, and for local businesses. So just thinking about education for a minute, 320,000 tonnes of waste leaves the area, goes a long distance to get landfilled or treated. We've got 72,000 tonnes of waste from households still being landfilled. What we're proposing is a 60,000 tonne facility. We actually have permission, or we're allocated in the plan rather, for 166,000 tonnes of additional capacity here, but we're not proposing that much. It's 60,000 tonnes with some extra recycling that we're proposing. And what that means is there's a lot of waste still left over, and we feel that's a shared responsibility. So the other half, the other part of the solution, if you like, is all of us reducing, reusing and recycling more. And that's what the visitor and education facility that we're proposing to build here as part of this investment, as part of this development, is all about. It's about all of us understanding what more we can do to reduce waste, reuse and recycle more, whilst we recycle and recover the things that come here. We make the most of the energy that's embedded in the things that we can't recycle. In terms of employment and skills and training, so we've got 45 employees at the company. We're proposing another 10 as part of this development. A range of skills, lots of different skills, really, I think personally, really interesting jobs. Something that really makes you want to go to work every day, and it's brilliant. Also in terms of supply chain, local businesses, there's a lot of opportunity there for working with even more local companies. We try and do as much as we can locally. Obviously some things that we use are built or manufactured further away, but certainly in terms of the construction phase, we're really looking to work with local businesses, so get in touch. So anything you've got here that you want to tell us about, any ideas around education, any opportunities around energy particularly, and especially in terms of building the facility and operating our business, we're really interested to hear from you. So another aspect that people are really interested in is traffic and travel. So what we've done, obviously it's very difficult at the moment. Earlier this year, where we would have normally been doing the traffic surveys, traffic was much lower on the roads, so it has picked up recently. In October we ran some more some traffic surveys to give us some data, but what we're doing is we're looking at previous data and information as well about traffic levels pre-COVID. So I think it's really important that we are spending quite a lot of time on this to get it right. We have to use a standard model to work out the amount of traffic and when it's going to when it's on the roads, and what we might end up contributing to that level of traffic. So I think probably best to focus on the last table here. So this is a worst case scenario using the standard model, which sets out the amount of additional percentage, if you like, of additional movements, additional vehicle movements. As you can see, from Parley, just under 1% additional, from Herne, around the airport, just over 1% in the AM peak, so 8 till 9, and in the PM peak, just under 0.5% of additional vehicle movements. So relatively small, I think, around that 1 or 0.5 to 1%, relatively small amount of additional vehicle movements. So, but we're not, resting on our laurels at all. In terms of the AM and PM peak, the way we use the model, it generates numbers, but actually in reality, what tends to happen is you don't receive vehicles during the AM and PM peak in anything like the numbers that the model might suggest. And the reason for that is that quite often, a recycling vehicle or a rubbish collection vehicle is going to be collecting during the AM peak, or by the PM peak they're normally finished. So we don't generally get the AM and PM traffic in the same sort of numbers, but nevertheless we've done the work and we continue to work hard on that, and that will be in the planning application when it's submitted in more detail. This is just a graphic showing the roundabout at the edge of the airport there, to give you an idea of how things flow, and you can see that in more detail on the website. I think what's important to mention here is that waste journeys are essential. So when your bins are collected, whether that's recycling or rubbish, whether it's at work, at school, at home, or out and about, when bins are collected, that's an essential journey. It's really hard to avoid those journeys. What we can do is reduce the mileage, how far it travels, and that's part of our solution here. The other aspect, just to reflect on, is that some of the journeys we make aren't essential, so for leisure, for example. And so we'd really like to help with that aspect as well. There's a great accessible path that comes past the site, goes past the solar panels, from the airport up to Trickett's Cross and into Ferndown. So check it out, jump on your bike or your horse, or go for a walk, and you can experience that. So there's some improvements that could be made to that. But there's also access improvements to other paths and routes through the Dampney farm, if you like, the land that's been farmed by the Dampney family here for many years, and includes the eco park. So there's things that we are looking at as well that we may be able to help with in terms of connections in the wider area. So we're really keen to hear from people about their ideas. So this development is part of I suppose, reordering of the site. So the site won't be any larger, it's the same footprint, but we're going to move things around so they're more efficient, they make more sense in the locations that they will be, and obviously build the ERF, the energy recovery facility, as well, along with some other improvements. So I'll just talk you through the graphic. So in the top left corner, the blue building there, you can see the ERF plant. That's where the plant would go. The chimney stack would be at this end here. So the vehicles would reverse in and empty, and then the material would be pre-sorted, and then the energy recovery facility is actually this end here, it's this piece here. The AD plant that we have permission for would be built next to it. So this would replace, remember, the biofuel facility. This is where the AD plant will go. That's currently where the soil is processed. So the soil will move down, the soil processing will move down to the far end, which is where the wood is currently processed. The wood processing will move to this end here, because that's a cleaner process. And that's where the composting is at the moment. The composting will move into the middle of the site here. So we've got a slightly, for us anyway, a more logical way of managing the site. And I think the other thing to mention is a building here that we've got permission for, a solid recovered fuel facility that we're planning to build. We already have permission for that. And a visitor and education and new admin and welfare building, replacing the temporary accommodation we've got on site. So that's where our visitor and education facility will go, along with parking, replacing the current car park. And then on this side you can see some views of the proposed building, the ERF building, and what it will look like. And there's more information available on the website. We're updating that as we go through the planning process. So this is the entrance off of Chapel Lane. So you'd only really see this if you come up Chapel Lane to access the site. So that's the current weighbridge there and the new building as proposed with the chimney stack. This is from further down Chapel Lane back towards the airport, south of the site, looking across the field next door, and you can see the building with the chimney stack. The third view here is from East Parley Common. You can see some solar panels in the foreground there, and then the building and the chimney stack, and the airport is behind. And then finally from Parley Common you can see the building here and the chimney stack below, distant from the power lines, but below the power lines, and there's a power line going through the shot. There's more work being done on the visual impact assessment, on all of the impacts that we need to consider as part of the planning application, and that's going to be submitted later this year. So we're looking to submit the planning application in December. In the meantime, we'd welcome your views. We're really keen to hear from you what you think about the proposals, what you think about the education aspects, the energy opportunities, the active travel aspects as well, the employment and supply chain opportunities as well. So yeah, get in touch and give us your views. You can find out more on the website. You can email us at erfproject@thisiseco.co.uk. So thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you.